Vancouver's lush forests and shimmering waterfront hide a painful reality: thousands live without shelter. Having witnessed the impact of city life's hardships, I'm struck by the sharp divide between this city's sparkling skyline and the tents lining its streets. The homelessness crisis in Vancouver, much like the plight of the homeless in America, is a quiet sorrow driven by skyrocketing rents, a devastating opioid epidemic, and harsh weather. Come with me as we explore the root causes, the human toll, particularly addictions hold, and the fragile hope for solutions. This is a story that cannot be ignored. A city's hidden heartbreak. Vancouver's homelessness crisis is a raw, aching scar in a city draped in emerald splendour. According to the 2025 point-in-time homeless count by the Homelessness Services Association of BC, an alarming 5,232 people live without homes across Metro Vancouver, a 9% rise since 2023. In Vancouver alone, 2,715 people shelter in rain-soaked tents or under bridges, with 48% fully exposed to the elements. Most heartbreaking 71% endure chronic homelessness, their lives trapped in despair for more than a year. Indigenous people, a small share of the population, represent a staggering 34% of those living on the streets, an injustice that stings sharply. Families too are swept into this relentless storm, their children's futures clouded by instability. These aren't just statistics. They are the shattered dreams of real people in a city of abundance. I've walked the Downtown Eastside, where tents crowd the sidewalks, and felt the heavy toll of lives forsaken. This crisis mirrors the struggles of the homeless in America, from Seattle's alleys to LA's sprawls. Why do such vibrant cities allow so many to slip through? How can we ignore these tarp-covered calls for help? Each one is proof of resilience amid devastation, a call to our shared humanity. As someone haunted by their faces, I cannot turn away. What forces drive this relentless tragedy? Let's explore the causes tearing lives apart next. The roots of ruin. This crisis in Vancouver is no accident. It's a harsh collision of greed, heartbreak, and failing systems. The cost of living is merciless homes average over $1 million CAD, and a one-bedroom apartment demands a soul-crushing $2,000 to $3,000 each month. For many, that's a wall impossible to climb. Worse, 35% of the homeless report losing their homes because they couldn't keep up with bills, a sharp betrayal in a city awash in wealth. Inflation tightens the screws further, driving up food and essentials, forcing families and workers to scramble to survive. But it's not only money breaking people. Indigenous communities bear scars from a violent history barred from stability by systemic neglect. Women escaping the terror of abusive homes often swap one nightmare for the street's cruel embrace. Even those toiling at low-wage jobs see their paychecks swallowed by rent. And Vancouver's mild climate, a bitter irony, attracting desperate people from Canada's frozen regions only to trap them in the same economic vice. This cycle of despair mirrors the suffering of the homeless in America. How can such a dazzling city allow so many to fall? What keeps us from witnessing their struggle? Having walked these rain-soaked streets, I am haunted by the faces behind these facts. Addiction, a darker force, waits to tighten its grip. Why do we let this persist? Let's confront that shadow next. Fentanyl and the opioid crisis, a devastating amplifier of homelessness. The opioid epidemic, with fentanyl at its centre, has become a ruthless amplifier of Vancouver's homelessness crisis. Between 2016 and 2024, British Columbia lost 806 lives to overdoses, with Vancouver bearing the brunt of this catastrophe. Fentanyl, along with methamphetamine, tightens its hold on the homeless population, accounting for a staggering 24% of those battling substance abuse. Downtown Eastside. The heart of the crisis is where addiction and homelessness intertwine, feeding each other in a relentless cycle. Addiction doesn't merely shadow homelessness. It often sparks it, with fentanyl playing a pivotal role in destroying lives. For 40% of Vancouver's homeless, substance abuse, particularly fentanyl, has robbed them of jobs, homes and futures. Michael, a former mechanic, stands as one of many tragic examples. After an injury led to his dependence on fentanyl, Michael lost everything, becoming another face of homelessness. Now, living in a rain-soaked tent, he struggles to stay sober, his determination barely holding on. The streets, with dangers around every corner, become a battleground where fentanyl overdoses take lives, and chronic illnesses like hepatitis C spread via unsafe needle use. Vancouver's harsh winters, with temperatures hovering between 0 degrees C and 8 degrees C, and constant rain, make survival on the streets even harsher, leaving people like Michael at risk of hypothermia. Meanwhile, summer heat waves, such as the blistering 40-degree heat wave of 2021, increase the risk of dehydration and overdose. With drug paraphernalia constantly ruined by rain, desperate users turn to unsafe alternatives, further risking their lives to fentanyl. Insight's safe injection sites and naloxone have undoubtedly saved lives. Yet, with only 2,000 treatment beds province-wide and year-long wait lists, this lifeline is precarious. The cycle of addiction persists, but without bold intervention, can it ever truly be broken? Nature's cruel toll. Vancouver's weather is both a gift and a curse for those without homes. Winters are milder than much of Canada, with temperatures rarely falling below 0 degrees Celsius. Yet, the persistent rain and high humidity create a bone-deep chill. Imagine trying to stay dry and warm when your only shelter is a soaked tent in Crab Park. Summer offers some relief, with temperatures between 15 degrees C and 25 degrees C, but extreme heat waves like the 2021 dome that pushed temps to 40 degrees C can be lethal for those without shade or water. These weather extremes strike the homeless hardest, turning daily survival into a constant struggle. The health consequences are severe. Cold, wet winters heighten risks of hypothermia, pneumonia, and skin infections, especially for people weakened by addiction or chronic illness. During summer, dehydration and heat stroke become serious threats, particularly for the elderly or those using substances. Rain-soaked possessions, from blankets to personal documents, are nearly impossible to replace, while the psychological strain of living exposed can deepen depression and isolation. Shelters provide some relief, but with only 1,000 beds available citywide, many are turned away, especially during peak winter months. The city's extreme weather response program adds temporary beds when temperatures plunge, but it's merely a band-aid on a gaping wound. Climate change worsens the problem, bringing more frequent floods and heat waves that disrupt encampments and services. How can a city adequately prepare for these growing threats? Let's examine who bears the heaviest burden. Faces of the forgotten. The homelessness crisis in Vancouver isn't just a local problem. It's a heartbreaking reality that reverberates across Canada. The numbers tell a grim story. Indigenous people, though a small portion of the population, make up a shocking share of the homeless burdened by the lasting trauma of residential schools and systemic racism. Women, many fleeing domestic violence, confront terrifying dangers on the streets every single day. People like Parissa, a homeless woman in Edmonton, understand this struggle all too well. She's been sleeping outdoors for more than 3 years, enduring the biting cold. She shared a disheartening tale of being repeatedly moved by police, with no shelter offered, fearing she won't survive another brutal winter. Her experience painfully illustrates those who fall through the cracks, especially Indigenous women, who often bear the heaviest burden of this crisis. The struggle stretches far beyond one city or group. Seniors living on tiny pensions cannot afford Vancouver's ruthless rents, forced to choose between housing and food. Youth aging out of foster care are left without a safety net, lacking the skills or support to escape homelessness. Immigrants wrestle with language barriers and low-paying jobs, teetering on the edge of destitution. And families are swept into this crisis as well, their children living in cars or tents, while affordable housing disappears. Interwoven with these struggles is the crushing weight of addiction and mental health challenges, trapping many in cycles linked to the opioid epidemic. These aren't just statistics. They are people. Parissa shivering in the cold, elders weighing rent against meals youth turned away from shelters. It's a gut-wrenching plea to our humanity. How can we allow this suffering to continue? Fighting for hope. Vancouver's homelessness crisis is a massive challenge, yet the city is not standing idle. As someone who has witnessed hope flicker in dark corners, I'm inspired by the efforts underway, even if they often feel like patching a broken dam with tape. The Housing First approach forms the city's foundation, placing roofs over heads before addressing addiction or mental health. It's a commendable strategy, but with 3,000 people waiting and too few new homes being built, it's a dim light amid the storm. The province's Belonging in BC initiative promises thousands of new housing units and shelter beds by 2030, yet time is slipping away quickly. When winter's icy rains arrive, the Extreme Weather Response Program opens temporary shelters providing warmth and hot meals. Still, with only 1,000 citywide shelter beds, many remain shivering in the cold. Non-profits such as Union Gospel Mission and Salvation Army are true champions serving coffee and blankets to weary souls at dawn. I've watched their volunteers, ordinary people like you and me, deliver hope to the hopeless. For Vancouver's 30,000-strong Vietnamese community organisations, like Mosaic, work to keep immigrants from falling through connecting them to jobs and homes. Addiction's grip requires urgent action. Insight, a pioneering safe injection site, saves lives with clean needles and overdose reversing naloxone. Yet, with only 2,000 treatment beds across British Columbia and year-long waitlists, help remains out of reach for many. Temporary modular housing offers shelter and whispers of a tiny home village near Crab Park, Kindle, hope for a bolder future. These initiatives shine, yet they fall short. What would you do to close this gap? How can such a vibrant city accomplish more? Witnessing these small victories, I'm left yearning for greater change. What barriers hold us back? Let's confront them next. Walls blocking change. As someone who has seen cities grapple with their deepest wounds, I'm struck by how Vancouver's efforts to aid the homeless keep hitting crushing obstacles. The greatest heartbreak is the severe shortage of affordable housing. With 3,000 people on waiting lists and only a fraction of new homes being built, hope feels like a fading whisper. Worse, low-rent units' lifelines for the most vulnerable have been lost to fires or neglect delivering a gut punch to those clinging to survival. The opioid crisis, a relentless predator, devours lives with 8,506 overdose deaths in British Columbia since 2016. Treatment beds are limited, and stigma keeps many from seeking help. I've heard of people avoiding shelters fearing judgment or losing their few belongings, a struggle that mirrors the pain of the homeless in America, from San Francisco's streets to Portland's alleys. Clearing tent encampments in the Downtown Eastside, intended to restore order, often leaves people displaced with nowhere to go, a cruel twist that sparks outrage. Climate change compounds, suffering with stronger floods and heat waves destroying fragile encampments and overwhelming services. Vulnerable groups. Indigenous families, women. Youth face walls of neglect. Programs designed for them, like safe havens or culturally grounded housing, are stretched thin, leaving dreams unfulfilled. It's maddening to watch compassion falter against systemic failure. How do we bridge this gap between heart and action? What prevents us from doing more? As someone moved by these struggles, I feel restless for change. Where does this leave Vancouver? Let's examine the future. A path forward or more pain? If decisive action isn't taken, Vancouver's homelessness crisis could escalate even further. Projections are alarming. By 2030, the number of homeless in the city could reach 4,700, a 50% rise from today. The opioid epidemic shows no signs of slowing, with estimates indicating 10,000 overdose deaths in British Columbia by decade's end if trends continue. The disappearance of temporary housing units and SROs will only worsen the crisis, leaving more people exposed to Vancouver's relentless weather-wet winters and scorching summer heat waves. But I'm not one to linger on despair without offering hope. Turning this around requires bold, coordinated measures. First, the city must expand affordable housing. 2,000 new supportive units by 2030 is a start, but it falls short. Protecting existing SROs and restoring vacancy control could help keep rents under control. Addiction treatment must see a massive increase. 1,000 more treatment beds and shorter wait lists could save countless lives. Harm reduction efforts like expanding safe injection sites and naloxone access are essential to keep people alive until they're ready for recovery. Targeted support for vulnerable groups is critical. Indigenous-led housing programs, safe shelters for women fleeing violence and job training for youth aging out of foster care could break cycles of poverty. Climate preparedness is also vital. Additional winter shelters and weatherproof tents can shield people from rain and extreme heat. Vancouver's Vietnamese community and other immigrant groups could play a stronger role partnering with non-profits to deliver resources and advocacy. Collaboration is essential. Government, non-profits and communities must act together. The stakes are immense and time is short. Can Vancouver meet the challenge before it's too late? Let's conclude with some final thoughts. A call to our conscience. Vancouver's homelessness crisis is a stark reflection of struggles everywhere, echoing the pain of the homeless in America. Skyrocketing rents, a relentless opioid epidemic, and harsh weather batter 232 lives in Metro Vancouver, each fighting to survive. Indigenous families, women escaping abuse, lost youth, and frail seniors deserve more than despair-soaked tents. Addiction's unyielding grip worsens their suffering, yet faint glimmers of hope. Housing First tireless non-profits still shine. The gaps demand bold action. More homes, more treatment, more compassion. Support Union Gospel Missions meal programs or local shelters to make a tangible difference. As someone moved by their resilience, I ask, what will it take to respond? The homeless in America wait too. We cannot turn away.